I just met today's guest a few minutes ago. I've been looking forward to this interview for a while. His name is Ralph Brewer. Here he is. And let me see if I can get him on here. Epidemic of validation addiction. Now, Ralph works with men, and I think, thought that we were going to talk about that just with men, but I mentioned him, as I mentioned in my little story earlier, that I want to see if it also applies to women. So just short answer, Ralph, do you think that we can get women who can relate to this as well?
It's a human thing. It's by no means a male thing. Absolutely. Thank you for having me on, by the way.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. I'm very excited for today. So before we even start, Ralph, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Absolutely. My name is Ralph Brewer. I'm an author. I've authored 5 different books. My latest is, let me get it here. It's called Rebuild, the Complete Guide to
Ooh, I
Prison.
like that font.
That will, thank you. So that will appeal to the men in your audience who are rebuilding after something awful like divorce and overcoming an abusive relationship and all that good stuff. And I run a organization called Help for Men, and you can find out more at helpformen.com. And within that, we have a private membership group called the Brotherhood, and we get together for discussion forums, which are very active, live Zoom meetings. We have frequent live Zoom meetings. We have over 1,400 hours of audio content for our members. Men love audio books, and the recordings of our meetings are on there. We have coaching, we have courses, and we do get together in person for a large conference in the United States as well as in Australia. And I've been doing this for years and I love it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So you definitely, as we mentioned earlier off camera, have experience in a lot of the issues that affect our community of people dealing with extreme divorce, separation, custody battles, and co-parenting hell. So this past weekend, I told you that we have a weekly legal abuse support group and we blend our male and female clients together, which is very unusual in the domestic violence space. But I always say, like, what's coming up for the week? And when I said the topic of validation addiction, a bunch of my women who were on camera said, "Ooh, what is that?" And so I want you to talk about what validation addiction is, and let's apply it not just to men, because I have a feeling that we can all relate to it.
Quickly, validation addiction can be defined as a compulsive need for validation, attention, positive reinforcement from another person. Meaning, if I don't get this, I can't function properly. Emotionally, I'm a mess unless I get that feedback from somebody, that positive reinforcement from somebody. So we back up to say a large portion of my audience, and in general, a large portion of men that consume self-help, relationship-oriented material, are what we call very codependent in nature.
I was
Uh,
thinking that word when you were defining it, and I said, I
yeah,
was thinking, this sounds like codependent, and it
it all
also
it
sounds
all
like a very
yeah.
female trait.
Thank you for saying that. Most people that are what we call anxious in their form of attachment to their partner, meaning very preoccupied with the health of the relationship, always seeking reassurance, always needing this validation and so forth, most of the time are women in relationships. But if you're a man and you've gotten to the point where you're seeking out podcasts and books and YouTube videos all about how can I make my marriage better? Why won't my wife touch me? Why does my wife seem to want anything to do with me? Ever since we had children, I feel like I'm this separate entity that no one pays attention to. If you're the kind of guy that seeks out that material, you're probably an anxious individual as far as your temperament is concerned, meaning you're very filled with anxiety generally, and you also have an anxious form of attachment to your partner, and your partner is probably what we call an avoidant individual, meaning
Okay, you've
that,
just described most of our clients.
there you go. That's why we're talking. We hear this stuff all the time. And the avoidant partner is the one who's just like, I value my independence over everything. So
Hmm.
stop trying to constantly need reassurance. Stop trying to reach out across the aisle and connect with me. The more you let me go, the better off I am. So in other words, no, I don't want to listen to this podcast with you. I don't want to read this book that you're reading. I don't want to go to the marriage counseling. I don't want to talk about feelings. Just leave me the heck alone, please.
Yeah, yeah.
And most of the time, a lot of women listening to this are like, sounds like my husband or my ex-husband. It's because that's usually a very male thing.
Hmm.
That doesn't mean that the men that are anxious are feminine in nature. It just means that their childhood baggage is such that it's led them to this point of always needing some kind of reassurance and positive affirmation from their partner. And when they don't get it, they kind of go off the rails. And
Hmm.
can get a little nasty in relationships, which is what you're seeing with your clients there. It can get pretty gross, and there's varying degrees of this. It's on a spectrum like anything else. Some people are just a little avoidant, like, leave mom or dad alone when we come home from work. I need to decompress. And kids, leave mom alone. She's fine, blah, blah, blah. But once they get that little time out to themselves and they're fine. They don't push their husband away. They don't ever, not touch their husband or their wife or whatever it is. They don't tell kids like, shut up, leave dad alone, whatever. So they found a healthy way of dealing with some of their little innate avoidant tendencies within themselves, versus the people on the opposite end of the spectrum that can come across as somewhat narcissistic.
Mm-hmm.
They may not necessarily check the boxes for narcissistic personality disorder, but when you read some of the description of that, you're like, boy, that sounds like my avoidant partner. And I've been really anxious, and I've been trying for years to connect with them, and I just can't do it.
You know what's really interesting as you're talking is Chris and I do a discovery Zoom meeting with people before we work with them individually. And I have found, because we always work with people post-separation, or at least once they've made the decision, I'm going to go, because I'm not going to argue about whether you should leave or not. That's too difficult. But I found that men that we talk to tend to be more hopeful and making excuses for their ex than women do. Everybody has a really hard time, but by the time we meet with people, women are more certain, like, I'm done, even though my heart is broken and I'm dealing with all this stuff. But men keep thinking, well, if only I made my wife happier, or I'll take her back no matter what. And I'm listening going, I hear you, but are you sure that's what you want? You've just described the past 8 years of misery from the very beginning. You weren't happy, and you're being treated terribly. You're being used as a repair person for somebody else's house. All you're looked at is a ATM machine, and you're not allowed to see your kids, and it's dictated by this other person. Like, why are you still saying you would do anything to stay in that relationship? Do you see that also with men, that because you don't really work with women, right? But do you see a lot of this making excuses and kind of toxic hopefulness?
That's that toxic hopefulness. I love it. I'm going to steal that. That is
Okay,
perfect.
good. I just made it up right now.
That's awesome. Yeah, every day, all day. That's what I hear. I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with men where I'll be sitting with them and they'll tell me the story of the last 10, 15, 20 years of the relationship, and my eyes get wider and wider. And I just have to do the time out, dude. What are you doing? Why are you putting yourself through this? And you know what gets the point across, and how ironic this is? Often when I talk to, and I do talk to women every now and then who reach out to me for the male perspective, they're on it's a horrible relationship. The situations are all the same. It's not necessarily a gendered thing. But you're right. We do seem to see more of the men hanging on in spite of what is so obvious to the rest of us. Like, dude, this is beyond broken. What the hell are you doing? So, I mean, I've heard stories of, men saying, like, I caught my wife in her fifth affair.
Mm-hmm.
And that really happened. I really talked to a guy who said that. And you're just like, the writing's been on the wall, my friend. And you have to wonder, what are the factors at play here that cause men to hang on so much more so? Now, that's anecdotally, that's my experience, your experience. There's no real science behind it. You can say, yeah, so many percentage of men hang on more so than women, but there seems to be something there. Now, I think a big push for that is a societal message, maybe. You're more of a man, and you're more of a loving, good person if you hang on no matter what. To the point where I'll have men who say the woman physically abused them.
I was just thinking that, yes.
And they will explain that away. I had one guy who famously told me, my wife's a Latina woman. That's just what they do.
We had that too, like 2 weeks ago.
Picks up her shoe and throws it at me, hits me in the eye. I got a black eye, but that's what it is, right? That's just part of the culture. It's like, no,
you know what though? The person that we were talking was talking to us about how his mother was saying, well, you got to stay in it no matter what though, because you made a commitment, and family is everything in our culture.
Yeah.
So you better figure out a way to keep that person happy.
There's a large portion of my audience, and this is a whole discussion we could probably go for hours on, who are what they religious conservative in nature. And I'm not their background in any way, shape, or form, but that seems to lend itself more to what you just talked about. Family of
Mm.
all else. Like, dude, I know you were abused. I know all these horrible things happened to you, but there is this structure, this what's the word I'm looking for? There's this thing called the family, which is
A
above you,
system. I'm thinking system.
system that is above you and the wife as individuals. So,
Hmm.
so what if you and the wife got in a knockdown, drag out fight, and you had to go to the hospital and you had stitches, whatever? Just put that behind you. I've even heard this. So what if your wife is on her fifth affair? And here's a message that goes with that. I'm sure you, man, have failed in some way to cause this.
Women get the same message, but in a different way. What did you do wrong? What can you do better?
Yeah. So
And then we blame ourselves for not being good enough,
to
which
gender
I
flip,
imagine is the same.
it's not as often to gender flip it where a man will report physical abuse. But what I will hear is she verbally abuses me, talks down to me in front of the children, says what a loser I am. I'm a horrible human being. I deserve all this awfulness. She will cheat on me and all these other
Hmm.
things. And going back to my previous point, what often gets men to wake up from this is I say, you are the equivalent of the stereotypical story of a woman with the black eye,
Hmm.
and friends say, what happened? And they go, well, you don't understand. We got in a fight and I said the wrong thing to him. I shouldn't have said the thing. He snapped. He's never done it before. He promises he'll never do it again. We're working through this. And you're like, any person who's an expert in that field will tell you the same thing. Sweetie, it doesn't stop at the black eye. Next thing you know, you're going to be in the hospital or
Hmm.
worse. You need to get out of that situation now while you can. Oh, no, you don't understand. So if that woman were to go to her religious leader, church, whatever it may be, and if she were to hear, you need to work through this, the family is above all else. I'm sure some women get that message out there,
They
but
definitely do.
it's not off. It's not until I frame it in that way that some men kind of wake up from this, going, "Oh yeah, I never thought about it that way. I guess
Hmm.
I abused spouse, and I need to, and this is going to continue to escalate and escalate, and
Yeah.
usually it does." And they hang on. Why is there that societal messaging saying you're not a good dude if you don't hang on? Um, is there kind of a quasi sexist message of she can't help herself? She's a woman.
Mm.
Uh, she's almost childlike, even though she did these horrible things. You kind of have to excuse it, much like you excuse your toddler. You know, there's that
Yeah, and
message.
women hear, well, or the excuses we hear from women sometimes is, well, he had a terrible childhood. He was abused.
We hear that all the
So
time.
I feel bad.
There is this there's this professional victim mentality. You hate to say it. I don't mean to belittle anybody going through this, where it's almost as if they're seeking out that type of partner
Oh,
to
absolutely.
and you will hear from I met this wonderful woman, like a guy who just went through a divorce. Men, by the way, tend to jump into relationships a lot faster than what women do post divorce, and we
Hmm.
marry at a higher rate. So we'll find one, we'll fall in love real quick, and we will commit ourselves to them real quick, often before the divorce is even signed.
Which is a big red flag of a toxic relationship. Somebody who wants you to commit really fast, move in, get married, so they have you.
So the man will say, "But Ralph, here's the deal," because he's been in my group, he's listened to my material, and he'll say, I'm looking for red flags, and they're just not there. She's a really great person. She's awesome. She's got a good head on her shoulders, blah, blah, blah." And I go, well, a major red flag is that she's jumping into a serious relationship with a man who's technically still married.
Hmm.
Or at best, a man who just got divorced and he's got his 3 or 4 kids and his ex-wife is abusive and all those other things. She's still somewhere in the background. A good, secure woman would say, you're still going through a lot. You're not quite ready for this. You're a great man. Maybe meet for coffee every now and then. But as far as a romantic relationship, buddy, you need to take a time out. I don't want to intertwine my life with somebody who's going through that right now. That's what a
Yeah.
secure and that's what a secure man would say as well. But often, again, is this a tendency within ourselves biologically as men, or is this a societal message of overlook all those red flags you see? You're a better guy for overlooking them. You're a better dude for bringing her into your life, regardless of all this bad stuff that you're seeing right here. Maybe
Hmm.
she was past abusive relationships. Maybe she's got this crazy ex-husband in the wings, whatever it may be. Maybe she has 6 kids from 5 different men, and all, regardless, if we can see through all that nonsense and see the good little person inside, then that makes you better as a dude and as
Hmm.
a effective mate. Good for you, man. I think that's the message we get. And
Yeah.
that gets you in a whole bunch of trouble, as you know.
As you are talking, I'm thinking about my partner, Chris, who's also the male half of Been There, Got Out. And we've been together for a little less than 11 years now. And he describes his past marriage as when they got together, he was this sort of knight in shining armor person. And so he got involved with someone who had all of these issues. And in his mind, he thought, if I could just save this person, if I could help her, she would just flourish. She's so talented this, she's so good at that. She just hasn't been supported. And of course, the stories that he were told about her father, about her former marriages, so it's like, oh, they just didn't see it. But I'm such a strong person that I can help carry both of us through. And I think that that's probably something that is familiar to you too. And then once getting in the relationship, staying in the relationship, I use the word tenacious. I forgot the word he uses, but I think tenacious is the better word, where it's almost like I don't want to give up. Like I'm the kind of person that doesn't give up. Perseverance, that's the word he used. He said, I'm a perseverant person. So once I committed to this marriage, it was like, I'm going to do everything. I'm going to tolerate everything because it'll show how perseverant I am. And I'm like, tenacious is really where I'm going to hang on no matter what.
It's it's a delicate balancing act, isn't it? A really secure person says, I'm not afraid to run for the hills if I sense that this is bad and it's going to be bad for me and my family and everything. You take all that into account. But at the same time, you don't want to run just at the first sign of some kind of red flag there, because guess what?
Mhm.
You and I aren't perfect. We all have our red flags. When I got divorced and I went through everything that I did so many years ago, it's like 13 years ago now. Some of my red flags were, this guy has the crazy, not necessarily fair ex in the background somewhere. That's some people don't want that, and guess what? That's fine if they don't want to be involved with a guy like that. He has
Mhm.
3 little kids that he's taking care of most of the time. That's a thing that people may say, oh, he's not going to have time for me as a
Mhm.
partner, potential partner. He's not going to have time to date as much as I want. All these things are perfectly okay. And if you're a secure person, you look at all that and you take it all into account. And you say, not necessarily the greatest mate for me. And that's
Mhm.
fine. That doesn't make you bad. It doesn't make them bad. It just means not a great match. But when you have a very codependent type of personality, very anxiously attached to somebody, you overlook like everything just so you
Yeah.
can feel it, because being with them makes you feel good. It makes you feel wanted, makes you feel validated.
As we're talking, one of the lines that I know comes up in abusive relationships all the time is, no one's going to love you like I do, and this is the best you're going to do. And you've let yourself go. No one else is going to want you. Usually I hear that in the context of women talking about it because our appearance is always focused on. But do you hear that kind of thing with men too, where they're made to feel that this is the best you can do and you better be grateful for it?
It's funny. You framed it in terms of, yes, the women hear the physical stuff more so. That's the shallow, awful side of relationships, is that our women are rewarded for the more youthful, sexy, attractive type of thing. So when you're with an abusive partner, that's where they hit you below the belt, is with that.
Mm-hmm.
No, be with you, overweight mother of 3 kids and so forth. So they know, how do I how do I lower their sense of self worth so that they'll stay with me? That's where they hit below the belt. Or where do you hit a typical man below the belt? Um, you don't make as much money as you should.
There it is. Yeah.
You are not as financially successful. You don't have as the status that you should at this stage in your life. 50-some-year-old man, who would want to be with a part-time employed, blue collar, just got laid off, blah 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 blah
Loser.
blah.
That's what it is. You're a loser.
You're a loser. So who are you going to go get, Mister? So just shut
Mm.
up, take your lumps, and deal with it. Yeah, a
Yeah.
lot of guys. What, it may not be so direct like what I said, but a little roundabout, little dings and
Oh, I
hits here.
think it's pretty direct from what we
Yeah.
hear too. Yeah, it's pretty direct. I think a lot of men don't speak up about it because they think they're not going to be believed, or they feel worried about being perceived as weak. Like, you can't handle this woman. Look how she's so much smaller than you.
Huge part of it. Yeah, that's a huge. What kind of man are you to put up with this kind of stuff? So yeah,
Hmm.
we don't share that with our friends. We don't even share it with our therapists. We don't share it with anybody because we're just so scared of the perceived what what society's going to think about us, what our social group, our immediate social group is going to think about us, which is a big reason why something like a men's group is huge.
Yeah, I
Uh,
was going to say, let's talk about that. Let's talk
yeah,
about community.
th- this goes against somewhat of what you said earlier. What I love, by the way, that you have the men and women together, so you can learn from each other's experiences. And what they will find is like, wow, it's not really so much of a gendered thing for 90% of this stuff. We're
Right.
speaking
Well, ours is, yeah, ours
like,
is very specific, like legal abuse, alienation, everyone's going through it. So it's very specific.
there you go. But what we have seen, and I have literally seen this, by the way, you'll have a room full of men sharing, pouring their guts out with each other. The tears are coming down. They're getting a little shaky. They're starting to let it out. Why? Because they feel safe to do so. They're looking
Hmm.
around the room. I got a bunch of other guys that have been there, done that just like me. Okay,
Hmm.
let me share my story. Let me get a little emotional. I feel safe doing so. Here comes a woman walking in the room. How's everybody doing? What's the man do? Literally sits up straight, dries his and says, "No, I'm fine. Everything's good here." Because why? I don't want to be seen as weak. I want to impress this woman. I don't want her to see me as some little weak little kid.
Hmm.
And also, let's put it out there. You hate to say it, but a lot of these men have experience in their life by virtue of who they bring into their world, who they attract, the type of women that they bring into their world. That when he does show a little bit of humanness, a little bit of weakness, a little bit of not so strong in the moment, he gets punished for it.
Oh,
And
yeah. I interviewed a psychologist about this who was saying how we want men to be more emotional and then we don't accept it when they are. We
very well.
women don't accept it.
And it sounds ridiculous, but the number one thing I hear from men are very sensitive to sex in a relationship. So sex in a relationship is very much to a lot of men the barometer for how the relationship's going. That's the
Hmm.
measure. If we're having frequent physical intimacy, everything's cool. We'll put up with a lot if we have that going on. So when that starts to go down, we're like, so something's wrong here. And they're right. Usually it's kind of a canary in the coal mine for something else going on in the relationship.
Hmm.
That's so man opens up to the wife. I'm really worried about a work thing. He starts getting a little weepy, a little shaky. Like, what if I lose a job? I'm worried about us being able to pay for this, and this, and I'm scared, wife. And the wife's like, oh, I don't like this too much. This makes me feel a little unsafe. The
Hmm.
man goes to embrace the woman. The woman's like, no, no, just give me space. I need to think about all this. Just no, husband, now's not the time. Don't. And
Hmm.
then the next 3 4 weeks, they don't touch each other. And the message is clear to that man. Don't you dare open up to this wife of yours that you love more than anything, because my barometer for health in this relationship, physical touching, closeness, and yes, sex, just went down the toilet. Why?
Yeah.
I opened up to her. Oh well, message received. Don't do that anymore. As
Yeah.
unhealthy as how a lot of guys interpret that, and it sucks.
Yeah. Yeah. Very true. How do you get men to join your group? How does somebody end up on your doorstep?
We got several different ways. Those books that I wrote, five of them, one of them really took off and sold a lot of copies, and it's about sex and marriage. Believe it or not, I know, surprisingly.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah, it's called the Dead Bedroom Fix.
Hmm.
Survey a
Great
couple.
title.
Thank you. We're due for another survey of our member group, but as of a couple of years ago, roughly 80% of our membership came as a result of that book. So that book sold hundreds of thousands of copies. So a lot of guys see that and they go through the process of watching my material online and joining my email newsletter. And eventually they say, yeah, I need some help beyond what I'm getting here. So they join our group. And roughly 70% of our group end up buying what we call lifetime membership to the group. Instead of
Hmm.
paying a small fee, they're just like, I want to pay a lump sum. I'm going to be here for years. It makes financial
Hmm.
sense. That says a
Hmm.
lot about our group. We've got a lot of guys that are very close friends now that have been in the group for years. And like I said, we do meet in person. We have our sixth conference is coming up in Louisville, Kentucky. We moved to different cities. So
Hmm.
Louisville, Kentucky in March this year, and looking forward to it. We got some special guests lined up. We got Dr. Robert Glover, who's the author of a very popular book called No More Mr. Nice Guy. He's going to be there
Hmm.
with us. It's the second time he's been with us. We have a psychologist named Adam Nissenson. He calls himself the Betrayal Shrink. Helps out guys that are going through betrayal. He'll be there. We have Lauren, the Dadvocate. She's a female advocate for men going through
Hmm.
divorce and custody issues. Calls herself the Dadvocate. She has millions of social media followers. She'll be there with us. So we're looking forward to it. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic. So, how can people find you? I feel like we could talk about loads of different
Oh, yeah.
topics, but we'll be here forever. But
Yes,
how
the
can people find you?
helpformen.com is the website. Helpformen.com. From there, you can probably get to pretty much everything that I'm involved in. But a lot of people know me through my social media handle, which I'm on here with you, called Dad Starting Over. I've been doing that for over a decade now, putting out material, a lot of videos, and all kinds of cool stuff. So a lot of people know me from that. I've had some videos that have gone to the viral range of millions of people. And every now and then I get recognized out in public, like, aren't you the bald dude that's on my newsfeed all the time? Like, that's me. Thanks for that.
Great.
Calling card is the head. And but helpformen.com is the website that has pretty much everything there. And check it out for you guys that are wanting to join a community of men that are working through all these kind of issues, the codependency, the getting with the wrong woman over and over again, whatever it may be. The Brotherhood is the name of our private support community for men. You can learn more at helpformen.com.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Ralph, for not just talking about male issues, because obviously a lot of this applies to women, but it's also fascinating to get the insight that is very, very familiar to so many of our male clients and also to our female clients too. So I really appreciate you taking the time for this conversation, and we definitely have to have more of them.
Absolutely. Thank you so very much for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.